Rivka, thank you for joining me on the Athlete Highlight. It's going to be really fun talking to you today. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to start by sharing a little bit about your running and your background.
So, I'm 67 and I started running seriously when, in like about 10 years ago, a little more, um, in 2013. So, yeah. And, but I've had a pretty active life with periods of inactivity, but I grew up in Calgary, um, which is close to the Rockies. So every weekend we were in the mountains doing something or other, either camping or hiking or cross country skiing or skiing. Um, and then when I left there, I entered a period of like not so much activity, and I was a student and a whatever and whatever. Um, but then in my early, then I got married, had my first child, and then me and my husband decided we would run an organic farm in Italy, which meant I was helping him build stone houses. So I was hauling cement and I was cutting down trees and I was carrying children around and having children and living a really active life. Moved back to Montreal, lived like a really sedentary city life for 10 years. And then I just couldn't, didn't want to do that anymore. My father died in 2012, and after the funeral, my sister said, "Let's go for a run." I was like, "What?" She gave me a pair of running shoes um and I put on like a pair of sweatpants or something and we went running around Halifax. And I mean, I don't even know how far I ran, but I probably ran like 2.5 kilometers or something. And going up a hill, I remember I was just like, how do you do this? Like this is weird, but fun. So, I think that was the beginning, and then it took me another year to really, like I remember in 2013, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this." So, I remember I was so happy when I finished my first 3K and then 5K, and everyone knows that feeling, unless you've been running since you were a child, which we all have. Like, we've all been running since we were children. Like, I have a picture of myself. It's not down here, but it's a picture my father took of me when I must have been 14, and I was literally running down a mountain path in the Rockies. So we grew up, we all grew up, or most of us grew up. I mean, children run from here to there all over the place. So yeah, that was the beginning. And then so 2013 I started seriously. And then in 2015 I ran my first half marathon. And 2017 my first marathon. Yeah.
That's awesome. And a couple other interesting thing about you is, speaking of children, you have a handful of children and your most recent one you had a little bit later in life, and your profession is extremely cool. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I've been attending women in childbirth since wow. So about 25, 30 years now. And I quit for a little bit and I didn't do it for about 5 or 6 years, and then I started back again. And yeah, I attend women in labor and when they're giving birth, and I do prenatal classes and I teach birth attendants as well because I'm one of the elders of the profession. So yeah, it's really interesting and it's really amazing because I think um giving birth is one of the points where women really test their bodies, and nature and life really tests women's bodies. And um, it's it's definitely one of those moments where you get to a certain point and then you like get through it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if men have that same like natural kind of uh like men like I think there are not so many women that have done like that really physical. Like I remember what at one point, and it's years ago, it was like 40 years ago, we were putting up a metal shed in on the farm, and I was up on the like we had the walls up and then we were attaching the roof, and I was up on a ladder and I was like pushing the metal into the side of the wall, and really a moment where, oh, I'm so lucky, like so few women get to do this, and men like have more of that kind of relationship with the outside, like with the, physical world. So a lot of our relationship is, throughout time and throughout the world is like giving birth. So it's pretty primal.
Yes, it is. And I think really cool training you around when you're busy with the births, you're on call all the time, so working your training around, when you have to go be present for a delivery has been pretty wild too, and recognizing that you need rest because you're up for a long time when you're doing that.
Yeah.
Very cool profession. What's been your favorite part about training?
It's interesting you should ask this because today is Wednesday, and on Saturday, no, was it Saturday or Sunday? I don't even remember now, but it seems like yesterday I had what was supposed to be a 3.5 to 4 hour run, and I had a 3 hour run, and it was absolutely horrible. It was just like, even thinking about it makes me want to cry. Like, it was like equipment failure. Things froze. I poured water all over myself. Then I felt dumb because I was clearly like had water all over the front of my jacket and I was freezing and it was actually a snowstorm. Everyone looked happier than me. All the things. My feet were heavy, my legs were heavy. I kept running into places where there was like a fence, so I would have to run back. And I got home from that run. Oh, so I got home from that run and I had like an emergency call from a young person who was having a panic attack and like, please help me. Whatever. I went through all the things and then I was like, that feeling of strength, like I did it. Okay. It was crap. It was 3 hours of struggling and like down on myself and all that. And like I did it. I went through it and I know that you get stronger from those little things,
Yeah.
So I think that my favorite part of training is, I guess my favorite part of training is looking back on it. You look back. It's kind of like when you've done a really long run and you kind of look back and you're like, whoa, like I started way over there, like 2 peaks ago. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And, obviously, my next question was what challenges did you face during training? And that was one of them. Have you had any other challenges during your training?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm starting to see that I get really discouraged right around the full moon, which is weird. I don't notice that. Like, everyone says, oh, are more babies born the full moon? And the answer is no. But I have noticed that there's a monthly cycle to how I feel. So the other challenge that I've had has been like emotional and, like mental like feeling down or feeling conflicted or having an issue with someone in my family really has affected my running. It makes me run slow and heavy. And so one of the big challenges has been to be able to separate those things, like just to put them in the corner and go out and do my run.
Yeah. And the emotional piece is so big in our training. It affects us a lot. And there is a very large gravitational pull from the moon that affects people differently, which is where the whole werewolf thing came from, turn into a werewolf and howl at the moon. But there's a
Yeah.
little bit of truth to that. People do feel that pull. And, there is an increase in anxiety. And of course, everybody has struggles with family and life. And it's making sure that you take care of yourself and satisfy your needs so that you can be there to help all those people you love. And I think you've been doing a really nice job of delegating and managing that so that you can take care of yourself too, because you enjoy running as well. Mm.
I do. And one of the things that I find really interesting about the training is one of the questions that you've been asking me and I guess other athletes to think about is what emotion is the one that kind of like propels you during like how do your emotions affect your running? And I have friends who I know that when they're angry, they run really well. Like if they want to get out of their house and leave the arguments and like leave the
Yeah,
kids that are squabbling or whatever, and they can go out and have a really fast and clean run. So I guess everyone's different that way.
and they are. And it does, it affects everybody a little bit differently. Some people can run, with that, and they tend to feel better afterwards, and for a lot of actually more people, it's crippling to have those challenging emotions. They tend to debilitate people a lot, so, when they come, just sometimes getting out the door is the hardest part. And as you know, once you get out the door, it's usually pretty good. Sometimes it's
Oh,
not,
yeah.
but
I cannot think of any run that I've ever gone on, even today when I was running through, like, 2 feet of icy water, that I've actually regretted going. Like,
yeah,
it's just one of those things I've never said, "Oh, I wish I hadn't gone." I have lots of times said, "Oh, I wish I like, I should have gone for a run," but
yeah.
yeah.
And you'll remember running through that icy water. Some of my most memorable experiences were things like that, where I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe I ran through that. It was crazy." And it just makes you feel so human.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been your best race experience that you've had?
Oh, what a good question. Okay, so, I have 3. Am I
Okay,
allowed 3?
of course.
So, there's one that I really love. It's the 21K of Montreal, and it is in the city, but it's on Jean Drapeau Island, so it's basically around the Grand Prix track and then into a different part of the island. It's not trail, but it's not in the middle of the city, and it's just wonderful. It's in April, right at the beginning of spring here in Montreal, and it's fun and so another reason why I like it is because 3 years ago I got third place for my age category, and 2 years ago last year I got second place for my age category. So I'm going to do it in April and see if I can like. Although there's this one lady who does it in an hour and a half. She's in my age category. It's 65 to 69. I'm
Okay.
not gonna. I can tell you right now, I'm not doing a half marathon in an hour and a half. It's just not in my genes or whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. But
That's fun.
the Joshua Tree Half Marathon was really fun. I just did it in November, and it was amazing because it was very challenging. We do it in the dark. It was sandy and rocky and dark and absolutely beautiful. I would say if I had to pick one, that would be it. And then another one that I would say was my second most challenging race. It was the hypothermic half marathon here in Montreal. It was a few years ago, and we did it on a cross country ski trail outside of town, and it was fun because it was really challenging, and I did it with my running buddy, and I mean there was so much snow. It was really dumb, and we were in the back of the pack, so like we because they did it on a track that had been kind of groomed, but so the first person got like the groom track, but by the time we got there, it was like footsteps. So yeah, yeah. So those are my 3 most fun ones.
That's awesome. And I don't know, maybe it was Sunday. What was your toughest training experience?
Um, I have to say, I really remember one day I was training for the marathon that I did in 2018, and the marathon was in mid-May. I was doing like 35 kilometers or something. Um, and that training, like the 2 marathons that I did, I trained completely from like the little Runkeeper app training thing and stuff I would find online. And like I have this sheet still from those marathons where I found this like your first marathon program. So I did it religiously, but I didn't know about fueling or about strength training. So I remember getting to about 10 kilometers from home. I went basically all around the city. It was really fun, but I got to about 10 kilometers from home, and I was just like, it just felt so bad. And I kept looking at my watch, and I was like, oh, I'm getting slower and slower. Because the so of course your pace per minute goes up the slower you get, right?
Yeah.
but actually I was looking at my distance and thinking it was my pace per minute because I was so out of it. So I was really not feeling like I wasn't bonking, like I wasn't gonna fall down or anything because I think I've got a lot of stamina partly from my birth attendant experience. Like I can stay up all night and I can eat like a granola bar and, have some sips of water and I'm good. But I just felt like, why aren't my legs working? I'm never gonna like that was my worst one. And even worse looking back at it, because I know that if I'd done more intelligent, research and training, I would have realized like, yeah, like back then I didn't take any food with me. I just took a few raisins and water. And for 35 kilometers, that's not great.
That's not a lot. I'd be
No.
starving.
Yeah.
What are the voices usually saying in your head when you run? Are they positive? Are they negative? A little bit of both?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like that was the other thing about the challenging run on Sunday. It was very like it was I called it a sad run because it was just like the voices in my head were brutal. They were very critical and kind of mean. Um, but usually when I'm running, I have my most creative ideas about whatever I'm doing, teaching or thinking about things or whatever. And yeah, I tend to get really positive. Like I'm a I start off slow, usually around 2 to 5 kilometers. I feel like I need to turn back because it's just not going to work today. And then after about 10 to 15 kilometers, I really feel good and I get in the groove. So by then I'm thinking like I'm I'm feeling good. I'm imagining like my imagination starts to work and I start thinking about things and feel positive about pretty much everything.
Yeah, and it's funny how those voices, they do that to us in races too. There's always that moment where you get so mad at yourself. Why am I here? This is hard. And it's always a good thing to turn that into something positive, which you have been doing really well with. Pretty awesome. So injuries, what kind of injuries have you had and how have you overcome them?
I'm really lucky. I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had anything really crippling. Um, I had I've had a few, the typical ones. IT band kind of flares up on both sides every so often. The first time I had it actually was quite a few years ago, and I went to physio for it, which was really great because I learned some good exercises and stuff. Plantar fasciitis, I had um, on and off for a few years, and then I was very careful about my recovery shoes. It was also when I was working at my cafe and I was on my feet for like 8 to 9 hours a day, and I wasn't wearing like my shoes were so important, even at work and every all the time. Um, and then what else have I had? They diagnosed me with arthritis in my knee, but whatever. That's what you get when you get older. So
More
whatever.
experienced at life, not old.
And the scariest thing was in 2021. I was diagnosed. I had something in my foot. Who knows what it was? I'll never know. They did an X-ray and then they did a full body scan. They told me I had severe osteoporosis. And I was terrified. I didn't run for 3 months because they somehow lost my results and mixed everything up. And finally, after 3 months, my doctor called me and said, "Oops, we made a mistake. You're actually in the like very strong bone category or whatever."
Goodness.
Um, so but yeah, nothing too bad.
Yeah. And what are your future goals? I know you have a really big one coming up soon.
The funniest thing, I've been thinking all along, like I've wanted to run a 50K. Uh, Facebook just threw something at me yesterday from 3 years ago where I was looking for someone to train for a 50K with me. And then I had a goal that I was going to run 65K for my 65th birthday. That didn't happen either. Um, I so I've been thinking I'm just going to do the 50K and then I'm good. I'm tired and I'm just gonna like I don't know what I'm thinking, like I'm just gonna knit or something, like run 3K every so often, whatever. But then just yesterday I was thinking, after the 50K, like there's that 35K in Italy right next to my house, and then maybe 50 miles, and because all these races look so great. So I don't have my future goal is February 17th. I want to
Yep.
do that 50K. Like I am finishing that 50K. Um, and beyond that, I'm sure a week after that, I'm going to be looking at the races
You're
coming
such a
up.
runner. That curiosity, can I go further?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 50 miles. How many kilometers is 50 miles anyway? Like, oh, that's the other thing, the voice in my head. I told my husband. So yesterday, he's in a big thing about protein because he's finally starting to listen to everyone in the family about his sports injury. So he made meatballs, really nice little meatballs. He made 21 meatballs out of like 2.2, whatever it was, the math. So then he's like, I wonder how much protein in each meatball. So I said, that's exactly the kind of math I'll start doing when I'm like at around 15K. Like, if I only have 14 kilometers left to run and I have like three, whatever. So yeah,
That's awesome. And what has your experience been like working with me?
absolutely 100% wonderful. And I'll tell you why. You're very scientific. Like, you know the science about how the body works, but you're also magical. You use magic in, like, I'm sorry to use that word for some people that don't like it, but you actually use magic in your um just your communication with me. Sometimes you intuit things that are happening that I haven't like come out and told you, and I really love that. It's the way I work with when I work with women, and I've never met any like I don't ask for a lot of support in my life, so I can't say that I have a lot to compare you with, but it really resonates with me how you use intuition, science, your own training, your own experiences, and all of the teachings that you've had about, as a personal trainer and an endurance coach and all of that. So it's really I guess I would say that your approach is holistic, and it resonates with me a lot. I like how you put pretty high goals out there for me to either reach or not. Like every day, I can do my long run, I can do my core strength, I can do my mobility and my strength, but it's really on me. So like, I don't feel like you're like going to be mean to me if I don't get everything done, which is important
Yeah.
because I think a lot of coaching as as also in my field, like a lot of work with pregnant women and with birthing women and with women athletes, maybe men athletes too. Actually, yeah, with men athletes, because my son-in-law is a professional dancer, and some of the stories that he has from when he was younger and learning to dance, like teachers can be mean and coaches can be mean, and unfortunately midwives and doctors can be mean, and you just never, I don't know if you have a mean bone in your body, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes from all the years I spent too working in dental hygiene and understanding that, my approach with my patients with their mouth too was a more productive and gentle approach because nobody wants to feel bad about themselves. They don't want to feel like they failed. So, and nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I don't expect anyone I work with to be perfect. And that's one of the toughest things with the people that I work with to kind of realize is you don't have to hide anything. You can just genuinely be you. You can skip a workout and that's just part of life. And I do the same thing in my training. So, that's it's
The thing
nice.
is, Courtney Dauwalter might be perfect because she brushes her teeth all the time and she's amazing.
She's
So
incredible.
she
Everyone needs
actually
to be
might
like
be
her.
perfect.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, she's so amazing to watch, and she always seems so
Yeah.
bubbly.
Well, that's the thing, and, like, that's another thing that I love about your training is you're training people to feel joy.
It's important because if you're not loving it, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, when I stepped in that really big puddle, because I actually stepped in an ankle deep puddle this morning because I was being nice and avoiding these 2 ladies that were just having a nice walk. So I was like, "I'm a tough guy, I'm just gonna," and then I was like, "Oh, no." It wasn't slush, it was actual water.
Oh
I
my
must have
gosh.
looked like such a dummy too.
Oh,
Anyway,
the weather the last 12 months has been really interesting.
yeah.
And lastly, what piece of advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out?
Just honestly put some running shoes on, make sure they fit well, get whatever you wanna wear on, and just go and run somewhere. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how far you go. Um, I would say stop at all the red lights because you get, like, you know, you're not invincible, so stop at the red lights. My running group used to tease me because I always stop at the red lights, and you'll see, you'll go a little bit further every time. I would say cautionary, make sure your shoes fit well. Don't go out in crummy shoes. You can wear whatever you wanna wear. During COVID, there was a guy in our neighborhood. So we live in a funny neighborhood because behind us is a really rich neighborhood, and in front of us is a, like, very mixed neighborhood. So there are people that can't afford fancy running clothes, is what I'm saying. So there was this guy in during COVID, and he was like, just wanted to get some exercise clearly. So he just wore normal clothes, and in the rain, he carried an umbrella, but he was running, like he was
That's
proper
awesome.
running. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
And
matter how you're doing it.
don't feel shy, don't feel like, "Oh, you're the slowest runner," because you are the slowest runner, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, you're running and that's all that matters. Well, I really
Yeah.
want to thank you for taking the time to talk today, and hopefully you can inspire some other people to grab a pair of running shoes, maybe an umbrella, and get out and
Yeah,
have some fun.
yeah, the umbrella was special. Well,
That's
thank you
cute.
so much for having me.